Beneath the glow of lanterns, a city breathes beneath its masks. Each smile a secret, each shadow a promise. No one truly knows what lies behind the porcelain facades, and those who seek the truth often find themselves lost in the masquerade. Tonight, the bells will toll, and one stranger will discover that some illusions are darker than any face could betray. Dare you unmask the hidden city? A chill wind braided through the lantern-lit alleys as Julian Gray's footsteps echoed on slick cobblestones. Every facade shimmered with silk banners, each street lined by stone sentinels wearing frozen smiles. And Julian knew, before he even dared to exhale, that something in this city was terribly wrong. He had arrived at dusk, thinking he'd discover a quaint festival. Instead, the bus stop was deserted, save for a gaunt attendant whose porcelain guise reflected Julian's own puzzled gaze. "The ceremony begins at midnight," the attendant whispered, voice muffled yet urgent. He pressed a slender finger to his lips and vanished into shadow. Drawn by soft chanting, Julian crept toward a grand plaza, where masked figures formed a perfect ring around an ancient fountain. Their veils, from ivory crowns to jade grins, tilted in unison as a discordant lullaby rose and fell. He strained to see beneath their coverings, but each time a mask slipped, it clung like new skin, glossy and seamless, revealing nothing of the faces it concealed. Fear coiled in his chest. Julian turned and sprinted down a twisting lane, panting through the spring mist. Behind him, torches ignited one by one, and the chant swelled into a demand. He skidded to a stop before a dusty shop window, glass fractured by desperation. Fingers trembling, he tore free a pale blue veil painted with rose motifs and pressed it to his face. The world snapped back as he inhaled, vision tinted by porcelain petals. The alley emptied into another plaza, its lanterns flickering out until only moonlight guided him. More dancers emerged, silent, gliding in robes of shadow, their every step a pulse of menace. Julian's pulse thundered. He stumbled, eyes locked on a heavy door left ajar. He pushed through into a corridor lined with alcoves, each holding a single motionless figure draped in veils. Their postures were calm, but the air thrummed with expectancy. At the corridor's end, he stepped into a grand ballroom where crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars. A haunting waltz drifted through the air even as the dancers fell into stillness. At the center, on a dais of black marble, sat a regal figure veiled behind golden filigree. The hush deepened until Julian's own heartbeat seemed deafening. "Remove your veil," the voice intoned, neither male nor female, yet echoing in every corner. Julian's fingers brushed the cool porcelain at his cheek. Behind the golden guise, what unspeakable horrors waited? He hesitated, breath ragged. All around him, the dancers leaned forward, eager. He lifted the pale blue veil and let it fall. In the instant before despair could consume him, a gloved hand offered a new covering, jet black, etched with twisted vines. Julian's mind screamed to flee, but his body moved of its own accord. He pressed the dark veil to his face. A jolt of cold ecstasy tore through him. The ballroom dissolved into spinning shadows and hollow laughter. His reflection glimmered in a shattered mirror, eyes no longer entirely human. The figure in gold rose and whispered, "Welcome home." And as the waltz resumed, Julian realized he would never leave. Julian awoke to a merciless hush. Light filtered through narrow slits in the marble walls, painting the chamber in cold silver stripes. He lay upon a stone dais, the black mask still pressed against his face. Every breath he drew felt charged with strange energy, an electric current coursing beneath his skin. As he pushed himself upright, the distant echo of footsteps reached him, slow and measured. The door slid open without a sound, revealing a corridor lit by torches whose flames danced unnaturally blue. Julian rose and moved toward them, each step releasing a soft click from the mask's filigree hinge. He realized with a mix of dread and fascination that the covering had melded to his flesh overnight. No seam, no sign of where his own face began and the mask ended. With no choice but to advance, he followed the corridor's curve until it opened into a low-ceilinged chamber. Rows of masked figures stood in silent rows on either side. Their coverings ranged from simple bone-white visages to elaborate designs encrusted with glass beads. At the far end, a woman in a dove-grey veil surveyed them as though counting their souls. She turned to Julian, her head tilting in a fluid motion. "You have embraced the city," she said softly. Her voice carried warmth, yet Julian felt a chasm of otherness behind each syllable. "The ceremony has chosen you, and now you bear its gift." He swallowed. I don't understand. What gift?" Her hand swept toward the assembled figures. "These are those who came before you. They awaken each dawn with purpose, to keep Mask City alive. Each mask grants a vision, a glimpse of truths hidden from mortal eyes." She stepped closer, torchlight flickering across her silver sheen. "You will learn. But first, you must walk the streets as one of us." With that, the rows parted, and Julian stepped forward. A soft rustle rose as he passed, like pages turning in a silent book. He pressed his hand against the smooth stone tiles and felt vibrations, hundreds of hidden pathways beneath his feet. The woman guided him back into the corridor, where a flight of narrow stairs descended into darkness. They emerged into a labyrinth of tunnels, carved deep beneath the city. Faint lanterns hung at intervals, casting weak pools of orange glow. Julian's guide pointed to rows of niches along the walls, each holding a discarded mask, barely visible beneath creeping cobwebs. "These were abandoned by the unwilling," she explained. "Their bearers sought escape, but found only oblivion." A shiver crawled up Julian's spine. He stepped past the first niche and felt a whisper brush his ear, as though the mask itself sighed with regret. He focused on the woman's silver whisper. "Fear will serve your purpose. Embrace it, and you will see beyond the facades above." They climbed again, returning to winding streets that lay fresh and unfamiliar under the pale dawn. Citizens, each masked, moved with graceful precision. No one spoke. All gestures were deliberate, as though performing a silent ballet. Julian tried to meet their eyes, but their masks reflected his gaze like black mirrors. The silver-veiled woman paused before a tall gate of wrought iron. Beyond it lay a courtyard paved in obsidian tile. At its center, a fountain gushed with ink-dark water that swirled in hypnotic whirlpools. "Drink," she commanded, producing a shallow silver cup. "You must taste the city's essence." Trembling, Julian lifted the cup. The dark liquid shimmered with threads of violet light. He drank. A flood of visions overwhelmed him. Ancient rituals beneath moonless skies, masks leaping from faces like living skins, and countless souls bound in endless masquerade. Pain and ecstasy warred within him as knowledge etched itself into his mind. When he lowered the cup, his knees buckled and she caught him. "You now see," she murmured. "You know why we endure." Julian raised his head, resolve hardening behind the mask. "They're trapped," he whispered. "All of them, bound by terror and compelled to obey." His voice sounded distant, filtered through porcelain and darkness. She smiled, an expression both proud and mournful. "And what will you do with that knowledge?" He stepped back, eyes scanning the silent courtyard. "I will free them." Her smile faded. "The city resists change. To touch its heart is to face oblivion." She gestured to the horizon, where the sun's first rays ignited the skyline in molten gold. "Above us lies the gateway, the mask maker's atelier. There the original face rests. Destroy it, and this facade will crumble." A surge of determination filled Julian's veins. He straightened, every nerve alive with purpose. "Show me the way." Together they slipped through a hidden arch beneath a tapestry of crimson silk. Beyond lay a spiral ramp carved into living rock, inscribed with runes that pulsed with blue flame. As they ascended, distant screams echoed below. Echoes of those who had failed their own freedom. Julian clenched his fists. Each wail only steeled his resolve. At the top, an iron door barred their path. Its surface was embossed with 1,000 masks fused into one grotesque visage. Julian pressed his palm against the metal. It warmed instantly, and the masks writhed in silent agony. With a deep breath he pushed. The door swung inward on silent hinges. Inside, the atelier was bathed in pale lamplight. Tools of brass and steel lay scattered on a marble table. In the center, on a pedestal of black granite, rested a single mask, cracked yet glowing with inner fire. This was the source, the primal cover that bound every soul in Mask City. Julian stepped forward, every footfall echoing like a verdict. He raised a heavy hammer from the table, feeling the weight of destiny in its handle. As he swung, the atelier trembled. The mask cracked further, shards of ivory tumbling like falling stars. A roar filled the room, an eldritch howl of anguish and release. The mask shattered. A shockwave of light exploded, and Julian shielded his eyes. When he dared to look again, the atelier lay in ruins. The runes had died, the tunnels collapsed, and above, the first true dawn peeked over Mask City's rooftops. Behind Julian, the silver-veiled woman knelt amid the debris. She lifted her head, her mask cracked, but her eyes alight. Freedom, she breathed. Outside, the city stirred. One by one, masks loosened, sliding to the cobblestones like fallen petals. Faces revealed tears, laughter, horror, and wonder. Julian stepped into the dawn, the cracked black mask falling from his fingers. He was free, and the city would never be the same. The first rays of dawn painted Mask City in a gentle glow, turning ebony rooftops into shards of onyx and ivory facades into pillars of pearl. Silence reigned as Julian stepped onto the cobblestones, the heavy black covering, now cracked and lifeless, slipping from his fingers. Around him, the streets were strewn with discarded visages, broken veils, shattered facades, and twisted filigree. Each fragment caught the morning light, glinting like fallen stars. He inhaled the crisp air, tasting freedom for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Yet beneath his triumph pulsed a deeper question. What remained of the city's soul once its bindings were broken? As he turned toward the Grand Plaza, he saw movement stirring among the ruins. One by one, former residents emerged from shadowed doorways. Faces revealed beneath torn coverings were raw and unguarded, some bearing tears of relief, others wide-eyed with disbelief. A young woman brushed pale hair from her temples, her cheeks wet with tears as she stared at her own hands. An elderly man knelt in the dust, pressing a trembling palm to his chest as though rediscovering a heartbeat long forgotten. They clustered around Julian, their eyes pleading for answers. He knelt against a fallen lantern post, running a hand through his hair as memories of the ceremony's waltz and the subterranean chants reverberated in his mind. "You're safe," he said softly, voice hoarse. "It's over." His words felt inadequate, but they offered a fragile thread of hope. Behind them, the silver-veiled woman appeared at the plaza's edge, her own covering broken in places, revealing strands of silvery hair and eyes bright with tears. She walked toward Julian, each step measured yet determined. "You severed the original bond," she said, voice wavering with emotion. "The city can choose its path now, but it must decide." A murmur rippled through the gathering. Faces turned toward one another, expressions shifting from wonder to uncertainty. Some pressed fingers to lips, recalling years spent hidden behind crafted exteriors. Others reached out, tentatively touching neighbors, as though reconnecting scattered pieces of a long-lost family. Julian rose, straightening the collar of his coat. "We have a choice," he announced, his voice strong. "We can rebuild, without the need for veils. We can embrace the truth of our faces and our fears together." An elder stepped forward, a tall man whose eyes reflected both sorrow and wisdom. His bone-white cover lay ignominiously at his feet. "For centuries, we believed the coverings protected us," he said, voice trembling. "Yet they were the true prison." He drew a ragged breath. "If we choose to walk unmasked, we must learn new ways to guard our hearts." A collective nod rose from the crowd. A chorus of whispered agreements filled the plaza like tentative petals falling on still water. The silver-veiled woman laid a gentle hand on Julian's arm. "Lead them," she urged. "Show them how to stand without fear." Together they moved toward the fountain where ink-dark waters once swirled. Julian knelt and dipped his hand into a shallow pool now clear as crystal. He lifted it, droplets sparkling like diamonds in the sun. He beckoned the others closer. "Drink," he said. "Taste the clarity you deserve." One by one, they knelt and cupped the water, letting its cool purity wash over them. With each sip, their shoulders straightened and their breaths grew more confident. Laughter, uncertain at first, then more assured, broke the hush. Faces once hidden now turned upward, catching the light in genuine smiles. As the sun climbed higher, the city itself seemed to exhale. Lanterns, long frozen in silent vigil, swayed gently in a breeze that carried fresh warmth. Silk banners rippled above, no longer sinister drapes, but colorful streamers heralding a new dawn. Julian stood at the fountain's edge, surveying the transformation with a swelling pride. Yet he knew rebuilding would not be easy. Beneath the surface of every heart lingered scars left by decades of concealment. Fear of judgment, shame of secrets, and the instinct to hide would not vanish with a single shattering. He turned to the silver-veiled woman. "We need community," he said. "A place where people can speak their truths without shame." She nodded, her expression solemn. The old council hall remains, though its gates have rusted. It was once the seat of those who upheld the ceremony. Now let it become the house of unveiling. Their footsteps led them through winding lanes to an ancient building of carved stone and stained glass. Julian pushed open the heavy doors, their hinges groaning in protest. Inside, sunlight filtered through fractured panes, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the dust-laden floor. He climbed the steps to the dais, where a lectern of wrought iron stood. Turning to the people who followed, Julian raised his hand. "From this moment on," he proclaimed, "Mask City shall be Renata, city of rebirth. Here we speak without guise, listen without prejudice, and build without fear." A cheer rose from the crowd, tentative at first, then swelling into a chorus of human voices, warm, imperfect, and wholly real. They gathered around the dais, some placing masks at its foot as symbols of an old life. Others embraced strangers, tears mingling with laughter. Julian stepped down, moving among them. He spoke with an elderly woman who confessed decades of loneliness hidden behind ornate veils, and with children who marveled at being truly seen for the first time. He clasped hands with the former council members, their heads bowed in humility and newfound determination. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Renata pulsed with life. Shops reopened, shutters flung wide to welcome the sun. Artisans shed their veils to reveal expressions of inspiration. Musicians tuned instruments free from the hush of midnight ceremonies. Street vendors proclaimed their wares, their voices carrying exuberance that had not been heard in generations. At dusk, Julian stood on a balcony overlooking the main boulevard. Beneath him, lanterns were lit once more, this time not to conceal but to celebrate. Lanterns of colored glass glowed like hearts set ablaze, illuminating faces uplifted in unity. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the city's heartbeat resonate with his own. The weight of the shattered mask lay buried beneath the paving stones, a relic of a past never to return. In its place, hope had taken root. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring challenges, scars to heal, traumas to confront, and fears to face. But as the first stars blinked awake overhead, Julian smiled, certain that no darkness, no matter how deep, could ever again bind the people of Renata to silent masquerade.